Hey everyone, this is Nick, and I have a dirty secret to confess. I always loved Unity, the desktop environment, not the 3D engine. I would have no idea where to start with this thing. So when Ubuntu introduced Unity, I was super excited and I loved it. And when they canned it, I was pretty bummed out until I forgot it even existed, because I thought it was dead. But turns out, it really wasn't. The great thing about open source projects, and Linux in general, is that anybody can just grab the code back and get working on updating it and maintaining it. And that's what's happening with Unity. And it's all being done by a very, very young guy that also makes Ubuntu Web Remix or Gamebuntu. So, in 2022, is the Unity desktop environment still a viable solution? Let's take a look. Now, something that's definitely a viable solution to store your files and photos securely and privately is today's sponsor, Internxt. Thanks to Internxt for sponsoring this video. They offer you some cloud storage space focused on privacy and security. They encrypt all the data you store on your Internxt drive, and your data isn't visible by any third party at any point during the upload, storage, or download process. Everything is encrypted end-to-end and GDPR compliant. Internxt offers you an online drive and a photo storage solution in the same package, complete with syncing, sharing, and backups. And they have apps for all platforms to handle all of that, including Linux, macOS, Windows, Android, and iOS, so you can get all your files on all your devices. You can get 10 gigabytes for free, and they have plans that go up to 2 terabytes for €8.99 per month. And if you want an even better deal, you can use my code LinuxExperiment, written in the description below, to get 25% off your purchase of an annual plan for 2 terabytes of storage. So click the link in the description below to learn more and use the offer code LinuxExperiment and start storing your files securely and privately. Okay, so let's first take a look at how Unity works, because it's been a long while and I can't quite remember it. Old age, man, it's not just a graying beard, it's also memory loss. So first, Unity is a shell, not really a desktop environment. It doesn't provide its own set of apps. It ships mostly GNOME applications, and a shell to replace GNOME Shell, that is the default on regular Ubuntu. This creates a few issues, but I'll detail them as we go. The Unity shell is definitely the inspiration for modern Ubuntu. You get a dock on the left side of the screen and a top bar. Things do differ a bit though in terms of how things work. First, the dock. It can't be moved to another screen edge. It's firmly on the left and it's not moving. The dock, or launcher as they call it, holds the dash button with the Ubuntu logo, as well as app shortcuts and opened applications, and everything else you might have plugged in, like hard drives. There's also the trash can at the bottom. Right-clicking an app brings a jump list with a few contextual options depending on the application. And damn, these still look good! Legible, bold typeface, nice spacing, transparent, and blur, that's just pretty. The dock displays all opened windows on all workspaces, and clicking the apps icon will take you to that workspace with a nice little animation. Now, the first small issue here, apps don't seem to always lock to their shortcut. If I open a settings panel, it opens a new icon in the dock, instead of linking it to the settings favorites that I already have. If I click the settings icon again, it closes the settings panel that I have and makes its icon disappear from the dock. Now look, it might be nitpicky, but it's still not very tidy. Hovering over an app icon doesn't have an effect or highlight, but you get the name of the app, so at least you know what you're looking at. If you have many apps visible in the dock, they also fold on themselves, so you can see them all and click them. But they don't use as much space. It's pretty nice looking and it's pretty useful. Another nice hidden feature is long pressing the super key, which brings numbers for each app shortcut. Pressing that number will launch the app, and you also get a nice recap of all keyboard shortcuts, of which there are many. Unity is definitely very usable for keyboard-focused users, who probably all will now start writing a comment below telling me that i3 is better. Go on, I'll wait. You're done? Let's move on. To round up the base behavior of the dock, you can tune a few things, like auto-hiding it or displaying the workspace switcher, as well as a show desktop icon. And you can change the icon size, although that setting is in the Look tab instead of the Behavior tab. Now let's talk about the top panel. It holds the current focused app's name, the global menu bar, and the system indicators. Yes, a global menu, my favorite solution to handle menu bars. It's just so much easier for me to have that menu always at the same spot instead of trying to aim at it inside of the window. Now don't worry if you don't like the global menu, there's a setting to disable it and display the menu bars inside of the windows themselves like an animal. But also you probably will want to enable that setting because there are issues. See, menu bars aren't that useful for GNOME apps, as most GTK3 and GTK4 apps don't have one. So that top bar mostly stays empty with the default apps. LibreOffice does make use of it, but Firefox and Thunderbird haven't been patched for it, even if you use the Debian package for Thunderbird. GIMP, which would benefit from a global menu as well, doesn't use it if you use the Snap or the Flatpak, but it does if you use the Deb package. Some Flatpak apps do work with the global menu, like KDE apps for example. It's just pretty inconsistent and annoying to deal with, as some apps will just not work in the same way as others. Also, that global menu isn't always displayed by default, it's hidden, and you have to hover over it to reveal it. Again, you can change it in the settings and have it always on, but the default isn't great. The usefulness of a global menu, compared to a normal menu bar inside of the apps window, is the muscle memory. You can just throw your mouse up to the right menu and not worry about overshooting the menu itself. It's just generally a good solution, except if you don't see where the menus are exactly where each menu is located, then you have to hover over it and then move the mouse to the right menu, which is less efficient. I think the menu bar should be visible at all times as the default. Another nice thing that Unity does with its top bar is using it as the title bar. When you maximize a window, its title bar disappears and is merged with the top bar, which means you're saving precious vertical space. If you need the window controls, they're also in the top bar now, and you can reveal them by hovering over it. Again, I'd prefer them to be always visible, but at least they're always in the same spot on the left side, so you can just basically aim for it without really knowing where they are exactly. As per the system indicators, they have that older feeling of being drop-down menus, tightly packed, much like what you'd find on Mate or XFCE. They let you access the network, language, and audio basic settings, and you can turn off or reboot from there too. It's definitely super familiar and it works much like GNOME does. That part hasn't aged a bit. There are also two features that Unity has that I really loved when I used it: the dash and the HUD. The dash opens when you click the Unity button with the Ubuntu logo, or when you hit the super key. It's kind of the precursor to the GNOME app grid and overview. It has global search to let you find anything you want: apps, files, videos, music, pictures, or folders. All results can be filtered to only display the things you want, and you can also look for individual categories using the little lenses at the bottom, or switching between them with Ctrl+Tab. You used to be able to add new lenses to the dash thanks to various PPAs, but these don't seem to be maintained anymore, so I don't think that's possible nowadays. The dash is still pretty useful. You hit super, you type what you want, you hit enter, and it opens. It's the basic workflow for GNOME as well nowadays. You can drag applications to the dock to pin them there, and you can right-click an item to get more information, although that rarely displays anything very useful. It should display reviews for the app and screenshots, but right now it doesn't work. You also can't see apps you might want to install from the Software Center. Although you can enable that source, it just doesn't work. And you also don't get those amazing Amazon search results anymore. I love those! Okay, now I lied, that was terrible, that was privacy invasive. It's good that it's not there anymore. Now these lenses at the bottom don't feel super practical anymore. For example, in the app lens, you can't move apps around or create folders, which makes it a bit less useful than the GNOME apps grid. For documents and pictures, it's okay, as it's an easy way to find the recent documents you interacted with, although it seems to take the dash a while to index new files. I downloaded a bunch of pictures to my pictures folder, and they don't show up in my photos lens, for example. Same for videos. The dash is still competent, but I think that other desktop environments have surpassed it nowadays. The GNOME overview and apps grid, or KRunner and the Plasma menu just do more stuff, and they just work better. The dash does look beautiful though, with a nice tinted blur and these white little category icons. It hasn't aged at all in the looks department. The HUD is another useful feature. You press Alt and it summons it. What it allows you to do is find an action or menu item related to the current open window and just type to find it. While it might seem less efficient than just doing the action, it's extremely useful if you know there's something you can do, but you don't remember where it's located. In apps with big, convoluted menus like LibreOffice, it can be extremely useful, and it also gives you the path for this action so you can find it later, if you can remember where it was, which I never do. Unfortunately, it only works if the app exposes its menu bar, so for LibreOffice it's okay. But for Firefox, it doesn't work, and it will only display the window actions you can do. The HUD is definitely a great idea, but it has its origins in the time where all apps had menu bars. Nowadays, even KDE apps are moving away from them. GNOME doesn't have them at all, and so the usefulness of the feature is kinda diminished. Which is unfortunate, because it's great. I think most desktop environments that still have menu bars in their apps should implement something like this. It's just good. Now, in the end, as it's shipped on Ubuntu Unity, you can feel that both these features are good, but they are not as good as they were back in the day. There are just better ways to do things nowadays, or apps have evolved in a direction that's not really compatible with the Unity vision anymore. Let's move on to window management, and on that front, Unity hasn't really aged. First, you get window tiling. It's super familiar, just drag an app to a screen edge and it's tiled there. Or drag it to the top and it's maximized. You can drag the whole top bar down to unmaximize, which is handy. There is no corner tiling, unfortunately, so you can't put your apps in quarters of the screen. Then you have the workspace switcher. Clicking it zooms out on a grid of all your virtual desktops. There are 4 by default, and you can move apps directly from one to another by just dragging them. You can also position them between workspaces. You don't have to anchor them to a particular one. If you have multiple windows opened at the same time, clicking on the docs icon brings an overview of all of them, which is extremely nice. That's something you don't get out of the box on other desktop environments these days, and I think it's an absolutely perfect way of navigating between app windows, especially with a dock or an icon-only task switcher. Although someone seems to be trying to bring this feature to the Ubuntu dock inside of GNOME, so all hope is not lost. You also have a bunch of keyboard shortcuts to handle your windows, like Super plus W to get to an expose view of everything that's open. Unfortunately, the workspaces grid doesn't display all windows in the expose view, so to move them you might have to drag windows one by one until you reveal the one you actually wanted to move. Generally though, window management on Unity is really good. It works as you'd expect and you get all the familiar features that we still have nowadays. It was really ahead of the curve back then. On the performance side of things, Unity used up 1.5 gigabytes of RAM out of 16, which is on par with modern GNOME or KDE when you have that amount of available RAM. Maybe it's a little bit higher. Things are pretty smooth and don't stutter, although the minimizing animation seems to take a really long time for me for some reason. The dash, the HUD, the workspace switcher, and all associated animations just fly by and open very quickly. It's nice to see. I remember that back when Unity was introduced, a lot of computers struggled to run it well. It was just hiccupy and performance was terrible. But it seems that hardware has finally caught up to it. Although you would still not want to run it on a potato computer. Unity is old, but not potato old. So, is Unity still good in 2022? Well, it's going to depend on whether you think it was good in the first place. Personally, I think it was one of the best options available at the time. GNOME 3 was a mess, and KDE 4 was, well, let's say not finished. Unity had personality, it had great looks, it had great features, and it was really ahead of the curve in terms of window management and how you searched for files and apps. Nowadays, though, its main selling points are also present in all other alternatives. The dash has aged a bit, and I think the GNOME overview and KRunner are more powerful and easier to use. The HUD has been rendered a bit obsolete by the disappearance of menu bars from a lot of applications. And while the window management was pretty advanced for the day, everyone else does it just as well or better these days. I also think that Unity should be shipped with KDE or Mint apps that still have menu bars. Unity is developed with Qt, so there's no reason to stick to GTK apps specifically. And since KDE and Mint apps do tend to work better with a global menu than GNOME apps, I think Ubuntu Unity at least should ship these apps instead. Also, if time allows, shipping a patched version of Firefox and Thunderbird so that the menu bar works with the global menu would be pretty cool. So yeah, the strength of Unity being the global menu and the HUD, those are things you can also kinda get in KDE Plasma nowadays with the global menu applet and with KRunner. So maybe these strengths aren't that important anymore. Still, Unity is very usable these days, and it does look pretty good with tasteful use of blur, an updated theme and look. And while its features are no longer head-turning, they're absolutely still viable for day-to-day use. And with someone that's actually interested in maintaining it and developing it further, there is no real reason to shun it as an obsolete product. Unless you want to use Wayland, because Unity is still X11 only. Unlike this segue to today's sponsor, which can run Wayland? Okay, now this one doesn't make sense. Anyways, Tuxedo is a company based in Germany, and they sell laptops and desktops that ship with Linux pre-installed. You can either choose your distro when you set up your computer among a ton of other configuration options and a lot of keyboard layouts, or you can install any other distro you might want on there, because if the distros that Tuxedo ship work, your distro will also work on the same hardware, which is really cool. They have a huge range of devices, from the smallest NUCs and small ultrabooks to the biggest, most powerful desktop workstations or gaming laptops, and you can just configure them to your heart's content, including your logo on the back or any other engraving that you might want. It's really, really cool. They also have some super cool projects in the works, like for example an external water cooling solution for the Stellaris 15 that I've got back there. I don't know if you can see it. You just plug it in the back and it's going to water cool the NVIDIA dedicated GPU so you can use it at its maximum performance. I think it's super cool. So if you need a new device and you want something that you can be sure that runs 100% with Linux, head over to the link in the description below, click it and get yourself a Tuxedo laptop or desktop. They're really cool. So thanks everyone for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't hesitate to like, to subscribe, to turn on notifications, to write a comment. And if you didn't, you can also dislike, but do tell me why in the comments as well, that's just more polite. And if you just won the lottery and you don't really know what to do with all that cash, you can also click the super thanks button or click on the PayPal link in the description, or even join my Patreon subscribers or my YouTube members. Both get access to a weekly podcast and the right to vote on the next topics I'll cover. So thanks everyone for watching, and I guess you'll see me in the next one. Bye!